Good morning. Thank you for coming. I'm Steve Christensen, the Executive Director of the Responsible Battery Coalition. We're a coalition of industry members, academics, and other partners. We're committed to the responsible management of batteries throughout their entire life cycle and committed to building an American supply chain for all batteries. Our members just this year have invested over $8 billion in that infrastructure of creating an American battery supply chain. So that's why we're here. That's what we're here to talk about. And I want to thank CQ Roll Call for working with us in putting this event together. It's been great to work with them. I don't want to delay anything and talk for a long time. I'll let that to our esteemed speakers here. So I want to first bring up Adam Mueller-Weiss. He's the Vice President of Strategic Initiatives from Clarios and President of the Responsible Battery Coalition for opening remarks. Come on up, Adam.
Thank you, Steve, and I want to thank Congresswoman Malloy for being here. I also want to thank Senator Cortez Masto for joining us via video. I want to thank all our speakers, but I especially want to thank our keynote speaker, General Crane and Meron, who traveled from Israel to be here with us today. And today is not just any day, and this is not just any DC event. On this day, in 1778, in a place called Barren Hill, the Continental Army was surrounded by a significantly larger number of British forces. Now, we don't hear about that battle. It's probably not one that you read in the textbooks, but because of their cunning, courage, and conviction, they saved the day. And in doing so, they ensured that vital supply lines were in American hands. Vital supply lines in American hands. That's why we're here. That's why we're working on this today. And that's why today is so much more important than just a regular DC event. As Steve mentioned, I'm Adam Mueller-Weiss, Vice President of Clarios, America's largest battery company. You may not know us, like the Battle of Barren Hill, but without us and what we make and do, the world comes to a halt. The United States would come to a halt. That's because we make the starter batteries that start every vehicle, that every American depends on, that you depended on, I'm sure many of you, to get here today. Our warfighters depend on them. Our emergency responders depend on them. Our long-haul truckers and short-haul truckers depend on them. And our farmers depend on them. I'm also proud to be the president of the Responsible Battery Coalition. And that coalition represents a big and beautiful supply chain that starts in every corner and every community in the United States. This is what we have to protect. This is what we have to secure. Vital supply lines in American hands. So let me talk a little bit about the threat. This supply line is under threat. See, at the end of the year last year, the Chinese government banned the exports of antimony. And antimony is one of the critical minerals that our warfighters depend on for night vision goggles, for artillery shells, and other applications. But what it also means is, and what it's also used for, are batteries. In fact, the batteries we make, the batteries we collect, and we take those batteries and turn them right back into new batteries from that big and beautiful supply chain, have the most antimony of any source here in the United States. So that's why my company was proud to make a $6 billion announcement of an investment plan on March 3rd. And we're very proud today to be talking about a $1 billion investment opportunity to build a critical minerals processing and recovery plant here in the United States. What I also would like to add is the state of Utah, Texas, and Indiana have been identified as primary targets or locations for this critical plant. So as we think about this, how can this come to pass? You know, we haven't made these kind of investments, the kind of investments that Steve mentioned in the United States, for a generation. Just let that sink in. The United States has not made the kind of investments we need to make to secure vital supply lines in American hands. And why are we able to even talk about these kind of investments? It's because action by the president. It's about the executive orders the president has put in place. But it's also about the advanced manufacturing tax credit. This is a tax credit that needs to be extended, that needs to go out a decade to give us a fighting chance to really confront the threat from China. Let me emphasize one other example of why this threat is so real, why it is a clear and present danger. We talk about the recycling center, the Critical Minerals Processing and Recovery Center. And just to be clear, it will take used batteries from every corner of the United States, every community in the United States, and be able to turn that right back into raw materials here in the United States to make batteries here. But in China, they have spent decades building up capacity in their country, not only to serve their domestic market, but to take every battery, not only in the US, but in the entire world. So this is capacity that makes no economic sense. It's a bureaucrat in Beijing that has another objective. So the antimony freeze in December was just the tip of the iceberg. We need a fighting chance. We need to be able to make those generational investments here in the United States and the ones that we were so proud to announce earlier today. So again, I want to thank all of you for being here today. And today, I just want to emphasize, is not just any day. It truly is a day where we all need to have the courage, conviction, and commitment to give this industry, to keep these vital supply lines here in the United States.
All right, thank you, Adam. Next up, I want to introduce Congresswoman Celeste Malloy, who I can't thank you enough for being here. She has an incredibly busy and important day today. I know she has a very, very important meeting right after this, so I appreciate her making the time to be here. Congresswoman Malloy, she represents Utah's 2nd District. She has since 2023. She's on the House Appropriations and the House Natural Resources Committees, 2 very important committees. And she's a passionate defender of Utah's rights to use and access its rich natural resources and public lands. So we thank you for being here, and come on up.
Thank you. I am excited to be here. Apparently nobody told Clarios that nothing in Washington, D.C. happens before 10 a.m. So thank you to everybody in the room for being up extra early in this zip code. I am excited to hear everything that was said today. Adam, what you said about controlling the supply chain, I also didn't know about that battle, but we are in a similar battle now. We've got to be able to control our own supply chains. We talk about American energy dominance. We probably don't talk enough about American mineral dominance and American supply chain dominance. Batteries are such a good example of a complete closed-loop supply chain, or what could be, but right now we have too much of it going to China. I do represent Utah's 2nd District. We have a town in the 2nd District called Antimony, so it seems like it was just fortuitous that I was invited to be here today. I really support what we're doing here. I really support the idea of producing batteries, recycling batteries here in the United States. Right now, it can take up to 10 years to permit a new mining or mineral recovery project. in the United States. It doesn't take that long in other parts of the world. Why does it take longer here? Because we have bureaucratic processes that have built up and layered on top of each other over the years, where we're not doing things we know how to do. We even know we need to do in a timely manner. And when we're not doing it, China does, and other countries. And if we are going to be serious about being a world superpower, we have to be serious about our permitting process, because that is the stumbling block for a lot of the things we know we need to do. It's not that we don't know how to dominate a supply chain. It's not that we don't know how to dominate energy. We've just tied our own hands. And it's time to say that out loud and address that. To that end, one of the first bills I introduced as a member of Congress is the Full Responsibility and Expedited Enforcement Act. And if you can't remember all that, it's the FREE Act. And it's a sweeping permitting reform bill. It doesn't cut corners. It doesn't harm the environment. It just helps us make decisions faster. And I'm excited to announce that it's being marked up in committee this week. So we're moving forward on that. I'm excited to see the United States step up, act like a serious country, and act on the things President Trump's trying to do, specifically the executive order on unleashing American energy. We have all the right talking points. Now we just need all the right policies, and we need the political will to align. And I really appreciate what Clarios is doing to move that forward. And I'm just here to say that it is an exciting time to be an American. It's an exciting time to be involved in natural resources, in energy, in permitting reform, and I support what we're all here doing today. Thank you for letting me be part of it.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Thank you again for being here. Really appreciate it. Next, we have a video message from Senator Catherine Cortez Masto, who couldn't attend the event, but she sent a great message for us on the video screen.
Hello, everyone. This is United States Senator Catherine Cortez Masto. I want to thank CQ Roll Call and the Responsible Battery Coalition for organizing this event. As you all know, I represent Nevada, the only state in the entire country with a lithium mine. My state is an exciting part of the domestic battery supply chain, and we produce materials that can power all the vehicles, from semi-trucks to ambulances, that Americans rely on. The critical mineral industry supports good-paying union jobs in Nevada and throughout the country. And I am grateful to the Responsible Battery Coalition for their investments to strengthen this industry in the United States. Let me tell you, critical mineral production isn't just good for our economy. It's also good for our national security. As we speak, the Chinese government is looking to be a leader in the critical mineral supply chain. If the United States does not invest in our production now, we will become more and more reliant on communist China. I am pushing bipartisan legislation, the Mining Regulatory Clarity Act, which would support the critical mineral mining in the West. This bipartisan bill, which I introduced with Idaho Senator Jim Risch, would streamline the federal permitting process to cut bureaucratic red tape and speed up the process of approving the new mining projects that are critical to our domestic energy supply chain and national security. It would provide certainty to our domestic critical mineral mining industry and our federal regulators without overriding key environmental protections. The United States must increase its critical production and supply chains. And you have my commitment that I will continue to push common sense, bipartisan legislation to support this industry. I also understand that now is a time of upheaval and confusion in the battery and critical mineral space. Inconsistent direction from the current administration and threats to gut energy incentives have made it difficult for the business community to prepare for the future. I'll always fight back against any attempts to roll back policies that support the battery and critical mineral industries, like the Section 45X Advanced Manufacturing Production Credit of the Inflation Reduction Act. I will also remain mindful of the trade policies that create chaos in markets and supply chains. Thank you again to the Responsible Battery Coalition for your continued investment in this space and I hope you have a productive morning.
So I want to thank the senator for sending us that message. I mean, mining is important, right? But it's more than mining, as you've probably heard by now, that processing and building our IP to be able to process and manage the materials properly throughout the supply chain. Right now, that does not exist in the United States. If we were to just say, well, we're gonna stop doing it someplace else and just do it here, we would have to piece together a loose coalition of probably about 6 or 7 countries, and we still wouldn't match what we do overseas. It wouldn't even come close to the capabilities that China has right now. So with that, I want to bring up Major General William Crane and have him come up here. He's a 40-year Army veteran, former Adjutant General of the West Virginia National Guard and commander of the nation's only critical infrastructure protection battalion. He brings unmatched insight into securing America's most vital systems from the battlefield to the power grid. So, come on up, Bill.
Good morning. I'm going to pull this up. So now that everybody else has already spoken, I don't really have anything else to say, so I think I'll just be done, right? No. I have lots to say, especially in this space. You know, I've been thinking about critical infrastructure for a long time, and as we talked about the Critical Infrastructure Battalion, they go out and do assessments, and I think everybody would be really surprised about a lot of things that could really go wrong in a short minute. So just want to talk a little bit about that. Thank you for letting me be here. Thank you for the Responsible Battery Coalition, CQ roll call, for putting this together. I know it's not easy putting together some of these events. Today I'm here to speak not just about a strategic resource, but a strategic vulnerability. One that threatens the very foundation of our national defense and our technological sovereignty. I'm talking about rare earth elements and critical minerals. The 17 critical minerals that are essential to everything from the necessary batteries to fuel the technology, to fighter jets, to missile guidance systems, advanced radar systems, satellites, to smartphones in our pockets and in our everyday vehicles. While rare in name, they are certainly not rare in importance. These elements and critical minerals are the backbone of the 21st century defense technology and our modern society. And yet, over 80% of the global processing capacity for these elements resides in one country, China. That is not just a trade imbalance, that is a national security threat. Imagine for a minute if during World War II, we depended on Germany for our oil and gas for our fuel operations. That's where we are with the necessary elements and critical minerals for our advanced technology military. During our response to COVID-19, which all of us probably want to forget, because it was not a great time, quite a few years, you know, it was a national emergency. And I was really surprised how reliant we were on China for masks and gowns and gloves, things that were critical for us to respond to that national emergency. So if tomorrow the supply of rare earth and critical minerals were disrupted, whether by geopolitical tension, economic coercion, or strategic embargo, our defense capabilities could be compromised. Our production lines could grind to a halt, and our technological edge could erode overnight. We must not allow that to happen. The risk is too high. If we don't produce the batteries, panels, and other critical equipment in America, it provides an opportunity for our adversaries to place communication nodes in our critical infrastructure, placing it at risk. This is a call to action, not next year, not next quarter, but now. We need a coordinated, all-hands-on-deck approach from federal, state governments, and from the private sector. First, Congress must significantly increase investment in rare earth research and critical mineral research. That includes funding for new extraction methods, refining technologies for our batteries, and sustainable alternatives, including methods to recycle. We need to break through the bottlenecks of today to secure the supply chains of tomorrow. We need to process in America, build in America, and buy in America. Second, we need to build and expand domestic mining and processing capacity. The United States has rare earth deposits in California, Texas, and Alaska, but we lack the infrastructure to fully utilize them. Federal permitting must become faster and smarter without compromising environmental standards. Third, our state governments must step up. They must work with universities, national labs, and local industry to build research hubs and workforce pipelines that support rare earth and critical element production and innovation. This includes battery production and recycling requiring domestic access to the raw materials. This is a particular opportunity for re-energizing the Appalachia region, which I'm keen to talk about, because we know that the coal ash that was from the coal that was burned contains rare earth elements. So it's an opportunity for us. And finally, our American companies, it's time to rethink your supply chains. Stop relying on fragile overseas sources. Invest in domestic partners, build American, buy American, and believe in American ingenuity. The cheapest option is not always the safest, and when national security is at stake, it is never the right choice. The clock is ticking. Rare earths and critical elements are not just a commodity, they are a strategic asset required for our advanced technology. The nations that controls their supply will lead the future. Let's make sure that nation is the United States of America. Thank you.
Thank you, General. I want to now introduce David Jordan, who's the Energy and Environments reporter for CQ Roll Call. He's going to have a conversation here with Adam. Thanks, David.
Morning. As Steve said, I'm David Jordan, the Energy and Environment reporter with CQ Roll Call. And maybe, do we want to, I'll take a better photo. Speaking today with Adam Muller-Weiss, again, the VP of Strategic Initiatives at Clarios and President of the Responsible Battery Coalition. And we'll start off with congratulations about your announcement today. What about the policy and business environment of the U.S. makes this announcement possible at this moment?
Well, I mentioned in my comments the work of the president, the executive orders, one around restoring energy dominance, which includes energy resources, which are the kind of critical minerals and essential rare earth metals that we're talking about here today. So first and foremost, I want to thank the president for that action. And it's really reinvigorated us to think about how we can invest in the United States. And those investments are supported and aided by the Advanced Manufacturing Tax Credit, which you heard the senator talk about, and we talked about earlier today. So it really is a new day here in the United States for these kind of investments. And as you mentioned, we are very excited about the announcement we made this morning.
And what is the importance of that tax credit? You mentioned having it in place for a decade. What exactly do you get from that tax credit, and what could be the effect if it is lost or not, extended for that period?
Well, ensuring vital supply lines are here in the United States is what that tax credit is about. There are specific provisions for critical minerals and the kind of battery production that General Crane and others have talked about here today. So one of the really essential elements is to give companies like ours the resources to fight back, to give us a fighting chance. We talked about the Chinese threat. That threat just didn't come overnight. That is the result of decades of very deliberate planning, decades of hundreds of billions of dollars of investment in subsidies by the Chinese government. And again, this credit, this president is now giving us a fighting chance.
And you mentioned we haven't seen these types of investments in a generation. Is the lack of historical, assurances the main reason you see is out, or are there other factors in play?
No, absolutely. And what I would add is part of that threat from China is they have so much capacity to process and refine these materials, antimony being one of them, lead-acid batteries and recycle them. As I mentioned, they have more capacity than the entire world needs. So what we really have witnessed over the past generation is an exodus of those capabilities outside of the United States because China has subsidized. China has built all this capacity. So they're able to take critical minerals, including from our own country, process them in China and sell them at cut rate prices to really flood the market with low-cost antimony or other rare earth metals. So again, we need to counter that imbalance that took decades to establish, and we need to do it as quickly as possible here.
And you mentioned this as part of this $1 billion announcement as part of a larger $6 billion announcement over the next decade. What do you see as the cumulative effect of all of the work Clarios is doing, and where do you kind of imagine we'll be in 2035?
Well, I imagine we'll be a lot closer to General Crane's vision of really starting to ensure the raw materials are mined here, the raw materials are processed here, and the batteries are made here. What I would also like to see, and we're seeing here today, is American innovation happening here. And I do want to acknowledge one of the inventors on our team that we have filed over 30 patents and have 30 patents pending in how we can advance that circular economy here in the United States and to create a closed loop for these critical minerals and to do it with the cunning and innovation I talked about earlier. So if I may, Jeremy Lemieux, can you stand up? And I'd like to give you and all of those folks at Clarios a hand.
And do you feel the case, it sounds like the case has gotten a lot easier. Do you still have to walk into rooms explaining why this is important, or have kind of the past 5+ years made the case for you?
Well, you've helped us out, and I think it's really a need for people to look this issue in the eye, to confront it, not this quarter, not this year, but now, as General Crane mentioned. But we're here today because not enough people know about these challenges. That's why today is so important. That's why we are here, and the need to have that courage, cunning, and conviction to help carry that message beyond here and to ensure these investments are made here in the United States.
And is there any other kind of support you're looking for from either Congress, the executive branch, or the private-public sectors?
In fact, this is not just about one or two particular policies. It's truly a whole-of-government approach that's needed. The Chinese have taken a whole-of-government approach. We need to do the same. Far too often, we develop policies in silos, and that really has to change. If you go back to the courageous people here in the United States who ensured we had a supply chain in preparation for World War II, they did it through a whole-of-government approach. And that is absolutely vital. It's not just one or two specific policies, but it's truly creating an environment, a policy landscape, a permitting process, financial incentives, all of the above to make sure we can succeed here in the United States. And again, the president has really opened our eyes and opened the opportunity here to take that whole-of-government approach.
And we've heard permitting a lot this morning. What challenges does permitting present, and are there any specific changes you have in mind that you would like to see as a company?
Well, I think Congresswoman Malloy said it best. There is an antimony mine in Idaho. The company is Perpetua. And that company, it has taken 7 years to get a permit. 7 years. Now, we believe that you need to have environmentally responsible permitting. We believe that there needs to be stakeholder engagement with the communities, but we also believe the critical importance of ensuring we have those critical minerals mined here in the United States. So 7 years is way too long.
And so is there anything else you're looking for in this reconciliation bill other than the 45X? We have it coming up in Congress. Is there any other facets of it that you're keeping an eye on as, you know, the Battery Coalition?
Well, I would say pass the bill. The worst case scenario is that we get caught up in delays. We get caught up in, infighting and intransigence. This is a bill that needs to be passed. And then we need to get to business rolling up our sleeves to ensure Congresswoman Malloy, her bill is passed, and we keep building that whole of government approach.
Okay. Well, thank you. Sorry. So thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. And up next we have, no,
Thank you, Dave.
thank you. Sorry.
I really appreciate it. So, and I believe we have a panel now of very esteemed guests. So if I can have you come up. Good morning. Thank you.
Amazing. Go ahead. What's our plan?
My last Mustang.
No, not here.
All right, hello again. In this segment, I'm joined by Lisa Jacobson, President of the Business Council for Sustainable Energy, Micah Thompson, Senior Manager, Energy and Utilities for Advanced Auto Parts, Kimberly Medford, COO of Intech, and Miron Badin, Chief Executive Officer of Hakurnas Leadworks. And so to begin, I wanted to ask, how does the announcement, like the one Clarios had this morning, play into the larger concern of addressing critical minerals, and what do you think the effect of these announcements are? And anyone can start.
I'll start. Well, first of all, good morning, everybody, and I just want to thank the Responsible Battery Coalition, CQ Roll Call, and commend Clarios for this tremendous announcement this morning. I think to me, and I'm going to abandon my notes a little bit here, it just reflects action. And I think that's what we all need to be focused on, the fact that we can get this done with American ingenuity. We need those alignments, and we need this whole of government approach, and we need the partnership with the private sector. So in my world, at the Business Council for Sustainable Energy, we're focused on trying to provide those policy frameworks so that the private sector can invest. But to me, I think it's inspiring. I also appreciate the comments about both the work in Congress and also the leadership of the Trump administration to create an environment where we can have those alignments. But we need to move fast, and this announcement today really shows that it can be done. So I have a lot of hope for this week and the rest of the weeks to come.
And what do you, for anyone as well, what do you see as the biggest national security concern? We've heard a lot about the military applications for these critical minerals. So what do you see as kind of the biggest issue to address?
Okay, I'll try to answer that, but before, I'll just present myself. And my name is Miron Badin. I live in Israel. I'm not here to advocate and tell you guys what to do and what you need to do. I'm too small, from a very small country, so it's not my place to tell you that. But I try to give you an overview from an outsider as an ally of the American administration and the American people. What happens when you wake up one morning, 6:30 in the morning, and you have sirens going on? You jump out of bed, you go downstairs, you congregate your family, switch on the TV, and you see announcements that there are rockets being fired on your country. Now, I'm not saying who is right, who is wrong, what happened. I'm not going into that. I'm just stating facts. And you don't know what to do. And you're in a shock. Saturday morning. I remember my son saying to me, he's 27 years old, and he says, no, it's a mistake. Something is wrong, it's a mistake. I said, no, it's not a mistake, it's ongoing, it's ongoing, it's ongoing, it's ongoing. And that was all of a sudden. And I'm going back to my background. I am the owner of the only lead recycler in Israel. We've been in business for the last 50 years as a corporate, but before that is 70 years. I'm a second generation. And I've been to war. I've seen war. I've been in the army for 3.5 years. It's ugly. It's not fun. It's disgusting, in my opinion. But I have to do that. I've been there. And guess what? The next morning, I get a phone call because we work with the defense. We recycle the batteries, and we work also with the defense industry over there in Israel. I get a phone call. We need 300 ton ASAP of lead now. What do you mean? He said now, like now. Luckily enough, we had it in stock in different shape and form that they are using. We've been working with them. So this is a. I'm trying to give you guys a perspective of what actually happens in reality. It happened to us. I've seen it. You don't want to be in a situation that you stand there and you look at yourself and say, what have I done all those years? What have I done all those decades? Where was I? You don't want to be there. So from an ally, from a small country, I'm giving you a perspective of what I've seen and what I've encountered a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago nowadays. So this is one. The second is that we have been working with Clarios for many years. Collaboration is amazing. We're doing amazing things together. And the word is coalition. Create the coalition. Get your friends together. Get things together, done together, because we are in a fragile situation all over, and you see that. Today it's Israel and the Palestinians, tomorrow it's India and Pakistan, the next thing you don't know. Things are happening all the time, so be mindful of that. So again, I'm telling you that from my own perspective and what I've experienced. And it wasn't 25 or 30 years ago, 40 years ago, it was just a year and a half ago. So that's my take on the importance of having the supply chain, on the importance of working together for your own country, and the importance that you are going to work with countries that you can work together and form a coalition. Thank you.
And so there's also, a ton of domestic concerns with batteries and the sort of grid applications. What do you think the importance of bringing that here has, just for people at home who are, just simply want to keep their lights running at all times? And I know Intech has a role in kind of grid applications.
Yeah, so we've talked a little bit about critical minerals and the importance of them, but batteries are made up of lots of components. So we make the separator that sits right in the middle of those batteries, whether it's a lead battery or a lithium battery. All of those applications take a separator, separate the positive and negative plates, to separate the anode and cathode. The battery doesn't work without the separator. And it is a critical part of the supply chain. It's something that we have committed to keeping in the US while we've seen our competitors exit and import from other countries around the world for lead batteries, and we're building a really big plant for lithium batteries today because there is no supply chain here. Today we rely on China for that technology, and it's not critical minerals, but it's people, it's a plant, and it's power. And if you can come up with that and you can install it, we can build this part of the supply chain here in the United States, which is what we're focused on doing, and bringing that onshore and that part of the supply chain that sits right in the middle of all of those batteries that we need for grid support, that we need for transportation, that we need for military, that we need for data centers, that we need for all of the applications that we rely on batteries for today and will continue to grow into the future. We have to have all of the components, and we should make them here. And there was some talk a little bit earlier about China, and I think Adam did a nice job at really addressing what the Chinese have been doing for decades. We're really good capitalists, and we're really good at competing on a global scale, but we are really bad in private industry of competing with the government because it's unlimited resources. So bringing together all those silos that you talk about across our government, across our supply chains, partnering with the right people, and building that out together. And we're really grateful to Clarios for leading this effort across the battery technology industry is important for us, and we want to play our part in it.
And this is again for anyone. Adam mentioned the Trump announcement in March, and what sort of signals do you think that announcement and kind of others coming from the administration, what do you think that means for the markets? Start with anyone.
In terms of markets,
Do you see it as providing kind of the support that maybe has been lacking?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I would say that it's going to provide the support for people like us, small guys, countries that align with the U.S. to be proactive and to have the backing of the Americans that we can work together and do things together. So it gives me confidence. Give us confidence, okay? And it's very, very, very important. I cannot stress how important it is. Yeah, we are now investing into new capacity, and I'm doing that, and we will do that because we have you guys to work with. We have you guys to back us and to be with you and to be with us, and we've seen that happening in action. So definitely it's a very positive one.
I would just say, from a leadership perspective, it helps to overcome what we just heard is a real educational barrier at the community level, at the policymaker level, and even in parts of industry that just don't understand this critical moment that we are in. So it's an organizing structure. And my hope is that leadership, that essential signal coming from our president and this administration will enable important conversations about the policy underpinning that we need here in Washington, but again, also in communities. I think it provides a direct articulation of both the security threat of inaction and the opportunity for the economy if we do act.
Yeah, from a retail perspective, we play an important role to collect and aggregate all these used batteries. There's value in these batteries, and the cost to reclaim those batteries is low. The reason is the regulations align with our processes. It makes it easier, and there's infrastructure to actually recycle and reclaim those minerals. The problem with lithium batteries is the regulations are constantly evolving, they're confusing, and there's no infrastructure. So that increases the cost of the programs. And we have every state with EPR programs. EPR stands for Extended Producer Responsibility. A lot of positives with those, and they're focused now on packaging. But every state does something different. And actually, Illinois is the only state currently that has an EPR program around lithium batteries, which exempts lead acid batteries, which is a good thing, but what happens with the next state and the next state? And again, just those constant changes state to state has been a very challenge to us. So consistency with some of these regulations along with infrastructure would really make this, keep the supply chain certain in the country, as well as make it a lower cost for us to manage.
Great. And so, we can't exist in Washington this week without thinking of the big, beautiful bill. And we heard talk of the 45X tax credit earlier. I'm curious if you all have any thoughts on the tax credit, kind of building on what Adam was saying earlier and the importance of it for what you all are looking at.
Yeah, I mean, the 45X tax credit is incredibly important. Adam said something really important earlier, which is let's go and get this bill done. The president has shown incredible leadership across really securing American energy. The battery technology supply chain and storage is a big part of that, and we need to move. And the 45X tax credit has been critical in partnering with private industry and private money and private ingenuity and building plants. It takes a while. You have to invest, and you have to build, and you have to create that supply chain. And so the duration and the time to allow that partnering is really critical, and it does give us a competitive edge with the Chinese when we have that opportunity. So it's important. It's also critically important to keep those dollars here in the United States. If we are going to steward taxpayer dollars, we need to steward them into U.S. investments. And I think that there's some really interesting things happening in the Big Beautiful Bill as it evolves that is helping to ensure that.
Well, I think that was extremely well said. I think thinking about this, what was really revolutionary about the enactment of this advanced manufacturing credit was its 10-year duration and the opportunity for businesses to plan. Looking back just at the last several years, we've seen hundreds of announcements of new plants here in the United States. I mean, the market is moving. We don't want to be disrupting those plans that are already made, and we want to continue to have that critical signal to the private sector that the U.S. is a place for business and a place where you can invest. But I think today, for me, I look at it, obviously the economics are really important, but the security and the resilience and all the challenges we're facing to make sure that we can meet energy demand increases in the coming year, we just don't have the luxury of making changes that are going to take us off track. And I think the administration and Congress understand that. We do not want to be disrupting the market, disrupting these plans to help us reshore and bring our supply chains here to the United States. So I'm feeling very hopeful about the conversations with Congress and look forward to seeing how reconciliation moves forward both in the House and the Senate.
I would say at the end of the day, there's a cost to the consumer. If today you buy a lithium battery for your lawnmower, it's a high cost. And a lot of it, might be a $100 cost associated with the recycling by itself. And so these investments have a trickle-down effect. At the end of the day, should lower costs for the consumer at the end of the day.
Good point.
And you mentioned kind of, the federal government providing both, assurance and support. And are there any other actions you think either the executive branch or Congress itself can take to provide greater assurance? Is there anything you kind of have an eye on?
Well, I think Adam mentioned it. He talked about permitting reform. He talked about the whole suite of research, development, and deployment, from partnership with the federal government, which we've had for decades. And then he's talked about these financial incentives like the tax credits. So they all work together, and they help strengthen that alignment and make this possible for companies to make billion-dollar investments over the long term.
And kind of what issues have you all faced individually due to the dominance of China in this area? Have you, individual challenges, any examples from the past couple of years?
Oh, yeah. And how? Antimony is, which was mentioned here a few times, is used in our industry. And imagine yourself a price that goes up from, I think, $7,000 to $51,000, $52,000, $55,000 in a matter of a year and a half. Changes all your costings. And all of a sudden you are struggling to get the raw material that you need. And basically they dominate, and they will dominate as far as they can. And it distracts the whole process of your production and how you're going to produce. I'll give you an example. When you produce lead, besides pure lead, there's something which is called lead alloys, okay? And with that goes the level of antimony that you need specifically to the alloy. Some alloys goes to the defense industry, and they request about a certain percentage of antimony. When you don't have that, you cannot supply. There's nothing to do with my lead. They cannot use the lead. There's nothing to do with it. So if you don't have the antimony, you're done. So this is one aspect. They play with the prices. They are fluctuating the prices, and they are playing with the prices on the markets as much as they want. I'm talking about the lead prices, tin prices, you name it. So you see it across the board. You just see it. That's from my perspective.
We had a little different China experience. So we've been producing separators for lithium batteries for 24 years in the United States. That was before there was a market here where people were building the batteries. And so we had an export company, and we were primarily exporting to China. And China made a decision that it didn't want any more U.S. exports. So between tariffs and other economic policies and local investments, they ran us out. And it took a long time for that to come to the U.S., for us to really recover from it and build our own infrastructure here for this particular technology. And it's incredibly important we keep doing it. We see China batteries and battery packs hooked up to our grids and our data centers, controlling our AI facilities everywhere across the United States. And so we've experienced you can't compete with the government. And so from a policy perspective, it's really important that our government continues policies that we don't have to compete with China here, because they will look for ways, and we've seen them continue to look for ways to bring their own competitive advantages onto U.S. soil. And so from a policy perspective, it's very important to watch that across the board.
And of course, we've seen the Trump administration talk a lot about AI and competing that. And do you see kind of the understanding that to win AI, you have to win the kind of physical infrastructure?
Absolutely. The physical infrastructure, meaning all of the power required, so investing in production and transmission, and that's a permitting issue, that's an infrastructure investment issue, and then when you bring up a data center, it also has to be consistent. And batteries are a huge part of that consistency to make sure that they don't go down, right? That backup power is really important. There are incredible companies doing really good work to support that. And it's just part of the full energy cycle and a really important part of it. And I don't think anybody thinks it's a great idea to bring that in from China and hook it up.
And so one thing that really interests me as a journalist is a lot of this talk about businesses having an easier time making the case. But do you still see you need to walk into a room and explain exactly why this is so important? Or is that kind of, is it making the case for itself? I mean, we've all become supply chain experts in the past 5 years. So I'm curious what your interactions are like for anyone.
I would say from a retail perspective, yes, you're constantly explaining why lithium is different from lead acid batteries when it comes to supply chain. Why can't just a Clarios take back everything on one pallet? Why does it cause a refinery to explode if it gets into the wrong batch? So it is just a constant training, understand the importance of why it needs to be separated, but the challenges of actually separating it and shipping it back.
Even the different technologies, you have to constantly educate people across. Like, you know, I've heard things like, well, lead batteries will go away in 5 years. We don't need those. Which is just shocking when you have to start there in the conversation. So it's constant education.
And do you feel, for Micah, do you feel consumers are learning a lot more about batteries itself, or is there kind of still a lot of work that your kind of associates have to do to explain these issues?
There's a high demand for lithium. I don't know if it's because they just think lithium is just the next generation, but then they balk when they see the price of an actual lithium battery. And so that's just a constant battle as far as, you know, what's the demand for the price of the lithium batteries that are out there. And so our desire is to get that cost down.
And do you all have any other, are there any other specific minerals that really, we've heard a lot about antimony, a lot about lithium. Are there any other kind of minerals of concern that we have here in the U.S. that are processing overseas?
I cannot answer this one.
And so kind of maybe just go down the line with this. Is there any facet of this topic that you are really going to be watching over the next months or years or, you know, decade? Kind of what do you think the biggest aspect of battery processing and recycling and, you know, everything we've talked about today is really going to be key to understand?
I would say for me specifically, we are partnering with the EPAs, the DOTs to understand, hey, how can we have regulations that actually fit from a retail perspective? So I'm engaged with that constantly. The other is just from an infrastructure standpoint. You know, will the United States invest in the technology to actually have the ability to process and manufacture these batteries in the States?
For me, as an overseas partner of the U.S., is to have this security that we can have this closed loop together and cooperate and have this stability that we can work together and recycle and get the raw material going to the right parts of the world and do that. So this is vital.
For me, I've just been struck in the last several years about the tremendous growth in capacity from battery energy storage. We still are, you know, we have a chance to be global leaders. We are number 2 to China right now when you look at the global battery marketplace. I've also been, you know, extremely heartened to see all the announcements made. Obviously, the one today is just extraordinary, but the announcements of the last several years to have that battery supply chain here in the United States. So I'm going to be looking to make sure that my role to support policy and educate policymakers and the public about what's needed for that public-private partnership. You know, I'm going to be keeping my eye on the ball on that, but hope to see those trends continue.
I think we have an incredible moment here with leadership that is leading our government like we lead our businesses, where you're breaking down the silos, you're getting the agencies to work together, you're thinking about policies across a spectrum to really make sure that that full supply chain gets invested in. And it happens fast. I mean, there is no time to wait for every component of every battery technology to be made right here in the United States. And we've got the best ingenuity on the planet. You talked about this incredible patent portfolio that Clarios is building and investing in. And that's not just lead acid and lithium batteries. That's all kinds of new battery technologies that are really appropriate for use, whether it's grid storage or long duration, where you have these major blackouts in cities that can happen because of weather. But now we have a 100-hour battery resource to protect hospitals and secure any kind of, you know, other emergency activity or police activity, and really keep that going. I mean, we watched the wildfires in California, and what did they do to build a network there for communication? They brought in a bunch of Teslas, and they used that energy storage and that communication technology to allow the first responders to communicate. those are the kinds of innovations and investments that we have to continue, and I think we've got just incredible leadership in this administration to make that happen.
Well, thank you so much to everyone on the panel. It was a great discussion. Thanks again.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you to our panelists. Thank you to all our speakers. I want to extend a extra special thank you to Congresswoman Malloy and Senator Cortez Masto for being a part of this and being a part of our important mission to create American energy dominance. You can't have it without American battery dominance first. So again, thank you all for being here this morning. Thank you to CQ and Roll Call, and a special thank you to the team at Nahagin Strategies and Bigwig Media. We couldn't have done it without you. So thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Have a great week, and hope to see you all soon. Thank you.